Public-private partnerships. How can PPPs deliver better services? PPP contract management, building a working partnership.
Those of you who follow football will probably remember the semi-final of the World Cup 2014 Brazil played against Germany in this football stadium, the Mineirão. It was an outrageous defeat. Brazil lost to Germany 7-1 in what turned out to be the worst defeat the Brazilian national team has ever experienced in World Cups. This stadium will thus be long remembered as the stage in which this national disaster happened. However, there is a second good reason this stadium outstands most other publicly owned football stadiums that have been built for the World Cup. It was delivered on time and on budget. That is a fantastic result given the historic data related to infrastructure delivery in the country. But what actually explains this fantastic success is that this equipment is a public-private partnership. A private company has been hired by the state government of Minas Gerais to design, finance, build and operate for 27 years this football stadium. What is interesting is that the real reason of this success, apart from a thorough preparation of the contract, is the fact that the state government has actually developed a deliberate strategy for contract management. Contract management represents all the activities required for the day-to-day delivery of the asset from the government point of view. So it includes managing the public payments when they do exist, which is the case in this stadium. But it also includes things such as the dialogue with the private sector, as well as other more operational activities such as performance management. All these tasks do not seem simple, and in fact, they are not. Contract management is, from my personal experience, one of the main reasons why projects fail to deliver value for money. And the interesting thing is, however, that in the last 2 or 3 decades, a lot of experience has been gathered around the world of how to do good contract management. The first issue required for effective contract management is assigning effective management responsibilities inside government. This is not an easy thing to do. Actually, it almost always includes the establishment of a management contract unit inside the contracting authority, who is responsible for all day-to-day activities of contract management. This should be experienced staff and should be a multidisciplinary staff, because it will have to deal with financial, legal and operational aspects of the infrastructure delivery. But this management unit, adequately staffed is not alone. It also has to have authority enough to articulate inside governments with all other bodies involved in contract management. The clear example is the Finance Ministry or the Treasury Unit, who deals with the fiscal consequences of PPP contracts. They need to dialogue clearly. The Contract Management Unit also has a two-way dialogue with the central PPP unit. On the one hand, it captures capacity and know-how from the PPP unit for other contracts being managed in the country. On the second hand, all the learnings of the Contract Management Unit should be transferred to the central PPP unit, because in turn it will be spread in the other contracts in the country. So the Contract Management Unit is a fundamental body to allow effective contract management. A second very important lesson is that contract monitoring is paramount. It's necessary to produce effective results. By contract monitoring, I mean the capacity the government has to obtain the adequate information. Clearly, this is not an easy thing to do. First, because who actually operates the infrastructure, the private sector, has more information than the government. However, unless the government do obtain the adequate information, it cannot, I repeat, it cannot enforce contract rules. It neither can effectively manage risks. So the way to obtain those information is vital to successful contract management. One of the things that is typically done, the increased use of technology. By that I mean the use of mobile phones, the internet, and other ways to obtain information. A typical example has been occurring throughout the globe is that road users can actually take pictures with their mobiles of maintenance problems, and that can be communicated directly to government, who in turn can act upon it accordingly, deducting payments if they exist, or doing other contractual rule, applying another contractual rule. In fact, technology can be a great help, but it only can go to a certain extent. Governments also commonly use, to a more thorough approach to information gathering, external advisors. That is usually done through some independent consultants or independent certifiers, which can act also in the operation phase, but typically in the construction phase of the asset. Those advisors can help the government to have the information at the right time. For this contract, up to 50 full-time professionals were working to gather information about the size of the grass and the maintenance conditions, which are used by governments to decide the value of deductions to be paid monthly to the private sector. The third very relevant lesson: transparency is necessary. Managing PPP contracts in an opaque environment is a short path to failure. Transparency allows the government and the private sector to operate in a more stable environment. That is to say, if decisions will be public, they tend to be more thought over, both by the private and the public sector. These three issues are paramount. Saying that again, the assignment of adequate contract responsibilities, the development of mechanisms to obtain information and contract monitoring, and transparency are three concerns that if the governments soon enough face, they will be clearly on a path to allow for the promised value for money of PPPs to actually be delivered. And then the outcomes of development that only infrastructure can provide can be actually used by the people, by the taxpayers.
This has been an Open Learning Campus presentation brought to you by the World Bank Group, accelerating solutions through learning.